have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Ann Northrup, but Andy Hum is not here today. Instead, we have our main substitute, Chris Cooper.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. We have a ton of news today, and because we're taping in the midst of the impeachment discussion in the House, we will not be discussing that. We will instead be celebrating the fact that the Hallmark TV channel has brought us to new heights of success and publicity.
Meanwhile, some liberal donors want their money back from Mayor Pete Buttigieg, while Megan Rapinoe endorses Elizabeth Warren.
Interesting. A mom and dad in Colorado are blaming the local Catholic Church and their conversion therapy program for their daughter's suicide.
Mexico City conservatives se ponen furioso, absolutely loco, about the feminized painting of Emiliano Zapata that has been displayed in a local gallery.
Yeah, things are crazy there. But we have a positive ruling for trans employees in Japan.
The Argentine President's son is a very popular and famous drag queen in that country.
Well, we've discussed him. We're going to show him at the inauguration of the president, and he's a big hit there. But back in Mexico, the Puerto Vallarta Sheraton Hotel rejected a same-sex wedding. So Hilton stepped up.
And I'll tell you about the new movie Bombshell, which has a little bit of lesbian content and maybe one or two other things that have a little bit of LGBTQ content.
Excellent. I'll look forward to that. Before we go any further, though, I want to alert our viewers about our shows the next 2 weeks, because we have special shows for the holidays. And so next week's show is going to be almost entirely filled by the old 1987 documentary Rights and Reactions about the really vicious fight over the gay rights bill in New York City in 1986. It's a fascinating documentary made by our old late friend Phil Zwickler. Andy's featured in it looking very young, because he was very young. But it's a great, great example of how these fights take place, and I think a good lesson for us still today. And then the following week, New Year's, we're running a fresh show with a panel of long-term survivors with HIV, including our esteemed associate producer, Bill Ballman, and Bill's doctor. And it's a great, fascinating hour discussion, bringing us up to date on what the issues are for people living with HIV and research and development issues too. So really, I wouldn't get this enthusiastic if I didn't mean it. Set your DVRs if you're not going to be in front of your TV, or watch us on our website at gayusatv.org. Christmas week, Rights and Reactions, New Year's week, the HIV/AIDS panel.
Meanwhile, the Hallmark Channel is airing a new Christmas movie, perhaps you've heard of it, Forbidden Kiss, in which a cable channel meets LGBT love, a cable channel loses LGBT love, and then the cable channel tucks its tail between its legs and begs for LGBT forgiveness.
Does this star Lacey Charbet?
Well, it does star 1 Million Moms, who the division of the American Family Research Council that decided to take on Hallmark Channel when they aired these ads for Zola, which is a wedding registry.
Mm-hmm. If you think there are 1 million moms in this group, I have a bridge I would like to sell you that goes to Brooklyn.
So-called 1 million moms.
Yeah.
So anyway, Zola has these several ads that they're running on the Hallmark Channel during the holidays.
We have a still from the movie. Yes, there is the kiss, the horrible, destructive to American families lesbian kiss.
Well, and what was so interesting is that this was only, I think this kiss or one like it is in only 2 of the 4 or 5 ads they had, 6 or 7 ads.
Yes, but one of the ads is fully devoted to this lesbian wedding.
Correct. So 1 million moms sees this on the Hallmark Channel, which is supposed to be all about family, fun, entertainment, and they lose their minds, and they're like, this must end. And
they lose their minds on an hourly basis.
Well, absolutely. But in this case, they got the cable channel to bow to their wishes.
It's really shocking, this right-wing fringe group that really doesn't exist in any substantial numbers. They are a subsidiary of the American Family Association, who really have lost their minds. They complained to Hallmark, and Hallmark, rather than having any reasonable reaction or discussion, immediately says, oh, we're canceling the ad because it violated our policies and is inappropriate.
Now, the problem with that statement is that they had several straight ads, Zola, running at the same time, which featured heterosexual kisses.
Oh, and but you're implying that there is some normalcy associated with same-sex couples, well, as opposed along with opposite-sex couples.
Well, we can talk a little bit later, maybe about.
We don't have to.
No, but what the sensitivity is here, I think, because the Hallmark Channel sort of considers themselves as a wholesome, safe place, and we don't. Traditionally, we don't fit that image. I ran into
surprise.
I ran into the same thing in Marvel Comics when we brought out the first gay character, and they were like, "Oh no, we can't do that. This is for kids." So,
Chris, this is the root of all our problems, that we are regarded and always have been as sinful and disgusting, and our fight for decades, centuries, whatever, has been to be regarded as normal. And not normal in the sense of homogenized, but equivalently sanctioned as opposite-sex couples, and that is the fight we continue to fight.
A regular part of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Well,
but others, not all others, see us that way, and that is why these fights continue and why we end up in this situation.
So, Hallmark caves, and everyone sort of, the backlash begins.
Yep.
Amongst them, the Chicago mayor, Mayor Lightfoot, called them out.
A lesbian.
Called them out for it.
Married.
HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, which is a gay rights organization, though you can't tell it from the name, suspended Hallmark's score on the Corporate Equality Index.
Not everyone likes our name, too.
Suspended their score on the Corporate Equality Index, which is actually somewhat important.
Yes.
Yeah, these corporations pay attention to these things. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, within short order, like a matter of a day or two.
GLAAD got very involved, too. Yeah. It disturbs me a little when these community organizations start claiming exclusive credit for these things. So I want to acknowledge that both GLAAD and HRC revved up their engines of outrage, plus a lot of other people. And the contempt that was heaped on Hallmark nationally, I think, that's the benchmark that interests me, that there was such an enormous tidal wave of outrage from all corners. LGBT, straight, across the board, people were just appalled that they would respond in such a craven fashion to the complaints.
I find it somewhat interesting how much the landscape has changed in a relatively short period of time.
Yes.
Because if you go back far enough, if you remember, I think it was the IKEA ad where they had 2 gay men building, some furniture.
Yeah.
No kiss, no nothing. It was really suggested that they were a couple and that was it.
Right.
And that was considered pushing the boundary.
It's true. And now America is up in arms that the Hallmark Channel won't show a lesbian wedding and kiss.
Exactly. So I think
we have come a long way.
As you said at the top of the show, it's a huge PR victory for us that this is where we are now.
It is. So Hallmark then saw the error of its ways, apologized profusely for having canceled the ads, because Zola canceled all their ads once the Hallmark Channel threw off their lesbian ad. And so Hallmark seeing the economic error of their ways, begged Zola to come back. I haven't heard yet whether Zola is coming back, but Hallmark does not want to make this kind of mistake with a large audience. So now Franklin Graham is all upset and talking about, the family values being violated and urging people to turn off the Hallmark Channel. But I think what has been demonstrated is who has the bigger sway here, and it's, in this case, it's us rather than the right wing.
We won't always win these, but we won this one.
Right. So impeachment is on at the moment as we tape on Wednesday afternoon. We assume that eventually tonight or shortly thereafter there will be a vote for the 2 articles of impeachment. I was quite moved just listening to them being read out today at noon in their full detail, and I hope the American people get a chance to hear that, because I think that has had more impact on me than almost anything so far.
I unfortunately missed that, but I was in Times Square yesterday with hundreds of thousands, or hopefully hundreds of thousands, I don't know the count, of people.
Well, people were demonstrating all over the country. So.
Right, and in cities across the country in favor of impeachment. So that was very encouraging. So that's where we are with that. We don't know. We don't have any outcome yet.
No, but we expect those to pass. And then, of course, a disgraceful sham of a trial in the Senate. But, I'm ready to impeach him for these judges he keeps appointing, including most recently confirmed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Lawrence Van Dyke, who has said things like same-sex marriage hurts the family, children, society. I'd like one of these people to explain to me someday how they all say that, but none of them explain how that is supposed to happen.
Oh, but he'll be impartial.
The American Bar Association rated him not qualified. He is also against reproductive freedom, saving the environment, immigrants, tribal sovereignty. He's got a whole list of things, but he is now on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, having been confirmed by the Mitch McConnell Senate at the orders of Donald J. Trump.
Viewers, take note. This is one of the prime reasons why we cannot afford a second Donald Trump presidency term. And it is up to us to make sure that doesn't happen. With a lot of elbow grease, we cannot assume that outrage will kick him out. We have to do the hard work of getting him out, because he's not going to get removed by the Senate. So it's going to have to be done electorally by us going to swing states, convincing our relatives in swing states that they have to vote this guy out of office.
We can't even afford another 13 months of him. Meanwhile, 100+ members of the House of Representatives wrote a public letter condemning the Department of Health and Human Services for repealing all its non-discrimination rules, which they're in the process of doing in favor of, religious options. I had dinner with some old college friends this week who have done and will continue to do going to swing states, registering voters, knocking on doors, and they love doing it. That's what they report, how satisfying it is to do that work. And of course, we know how important, especially in those key states.
I went down to South Carolina to knock on doors over the summer for that one special election that was still going on.
Right.
We lost that one, but we came remarkably close, which is an indicator of if we put in the work, we can make a difference.
Right. So, and meanwhile, on the Democratic side, among the candidates, Mayor Pete Buttigieg is under a little fire this week. There are some liberal LGBT, I guess, major donors who are offended by his sort of centrist approach that seems to be more and more evident. So they are asking for some of their money back.
I'm just confused. His centrism is a surprise?
Well, there's that. They got carried away with stars in their eyes about gay candidate, and then they started looking at the reality. Now, as my college friends and I said as we sat at dinner, I would vote for this breadstick if they nominated. I'd be perfectly happy to vote for Mayor Pete or any of the other, most of the other Democratic candidates.
I kind of draw the line at Tulsi Gabbard.
versus Donald Trump.
Okay, no, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true.
It's all relative.
That's true.
But Megan Rapinoe, our great soccer star, endorsed Elizabeth Warren this week. And they had this little, like FaceTime phone call thing that they put online that I thought was a little stiff. But Megan seemed enthusiastic, so there's that.
All right, tell me about...
We are not making any choices among the candidates at this point. Yes.
No, tell me about the Colorado mom and dad who blame the Catholic Church.
Well, this is a very sad story, if I can find it. Nederland, Colorado. Alana Chen was a lesbian who was sent to therapy at her local Catholic church by her parents. And the parents said at first they didn't think it was conversion therapy. They thought it was just sort of general counseling. But then it turned out that no, she was really being pressured very hard and told she was living an inappropriate life and was a bad human being or whatever. I'm making that up. I don't know what the exact language was. But at age 24, she ended up taking her own life. And the family is now extremely upset and talking publicly about how the Catholic Church there is practicing conversion therapy. Usually you hear about this in more
evangelical settings.
Yes, exactly. And so they are condemning the local church publicly, and it's very sad. And yes, there's Alana. And that's a terrible loss to lose our young people to conversion therapy.
Well, we will circle back to conversion therapy under international news.
I can tell you that Duluth, Minnesota has just barred conversion therapy for minors. Now, Alana at 24 was no longer a minor. She'd been having this counseling or therapy for some time, I think starting when she was a minor. But Duluth has now banned it for minors.
And it's banned in 18 states nationwide at present.
Yeah, let me just make sure I don't have anything else like that. No, let's move on. All right, so here are a couple of other religious things. We've been talking about Chick-fil-A and whether they had stopped giving to, they're concerned with their image, like Hallmark, and they claim to have stopped giving to specifically anti-LGBT religious organizations like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Well, it turns out that in 2018 they gave $1.65 million to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and another $115,000 to the Salvation Army. We don't have their records for 2019 yet, but we think that they are not telling the full truth about their donations.
Just for clarity, since they made their latest pronouncement that they're not going to give to organizations anymore, this is from before that,
Well,
correct?
It's 2018, but I think they had made that announcement or pledge, well, maybe it was
They've made
this
it more
year.
than once.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they made it in the past.
Yes.
And then it was...
So they made it in the past.
I'm editing my words here, because there are things we can't say on air. And it turned out to be a pile of bovine doo-doo. And then now they've made the pledge again this year. So this is after the second pledge, but after the first pledge, but before the second pledge.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible. In Florida, in what's regarded as better religious-based news, there's something called Advent Health, which is a big, I think, hospital and healthcare operation, which is faith-based, and they have committed $1 million donation over 3 years to the One Pulse Foundation, which is building the memorial and offering educational aspects in the memorial and scholarships and things. But there's also...
This is to commemorate the Pulse Massacre down in Orlando.
There was a news story this week about local residents and survivors and relatives of those who were killed being a little uncomfortable with the size of this whole memorial operation.
Well, they're trying to raise $40 million for this memorial and museum, of which they've already raised $18 million. Now, I don't really know enough about construction projects to know if this is sort of an outlandish sum or not. But.
Well, when you look at the plans, and we've shown the model here for what they're building, it's pretty big. And one wonders to what extent these things, you know, how big should these things be? And one thing was that when all this was planned, the Pulse Massacre was the biggest mass murder in American history.
It's since been surpassed, unsurprisingly.
Exactly. And, you know, since been surpassed, what about, are you watching Watchmen at all?
Yes.
Not that that's the first I've heard of this, but the Tulsa Massacre, the racist massacre, was 300 people at least, and they're just uncovering possible mass graves in Tulsa.
All right, you brought this up in front of a comic book guy. If you have not been watching Watchmen, you need to watch at least the first episode to see that reenactment of the Tulsa Massacre, because I was sitting there going, and I knew, and even so.
Exactly. When it becomes so vivid with actual human beings that you see that happening too. I hadn't planned to watch it, but I started reading things that were intriguing, and so I've started watching it, and it's pretty amazing, pretty horrifying. All right.
So that's Advent.
That's HBO. All right. And where are we?
Well, do we want to, or do you have more religious news, or do you want to talk about?
Well, I have a piece of good religious news.
Oh, share it.
Which is trans woman Nicole Garcia has been ordained as at the Westview Lutheran Church in Colorado, where she is now the pastor, and a lot of local clergy came out to support her in the beginning of her ministry. She's in the middle there in a white robe with a red stole around her neck, and it was quite a show of support in a Lutheran church with now a trans pastor. I thought that was pretty amazing. So congratulations to her.
Meanwhile, on the West Coast in San Diego, construction has begun on the Navy's historic Harvey Milk Navy ship. It's a refueling vessel.
That's a picture of Harvey at the top as a young sailor. He was discharged from the Navy for being gay.
Yeah. So this is it's kind of a monumental bit of justice here, that now he's going to have a ship named after himself after being drummed out of the service.
Well, the Navy, surprisingly, in the administration of Donald Trump, I have to believe it was not at his behest, is doing a whole class of ships named after civil rights heroes.
Yep,
They're
the
doing
first was named after John Lewis.
Right. And so Harvey, I think, is the second, yeah. So, yeah, that's great. Let's see, what else? I was very moved to see something that GLAAD did this week. They've got a series of videos called Home for the Holidays that they made with the trans chorus of LA. And what they are a little video, the chorus is singing, "I'll Be Home for Christmas." And the vignettes in the videos are all about trans people approaching their family homes at Christmas time or for whatever holiday. And you can read their minds about, am I walking into a safe space, or am I going to knock on the door and be rejected? And it's incredibly poignant and moving and meaningful. It's not some Hallmark card. It's a really difficult issue, and they've done this very, very well. And if you go to GLAAD.org, GLAAD.org, and look up their Home for the Holidays campaign, it's really thought-provoking, and I appreciate the fact that they've done this, and I'd recommend you take a look at that.
Transitioning from the trans news and the news of the trans person who took up office in the Lutheran Church,
Yep.
There's a sergeant who took up a new position in Clayton, Missouri.
Yes.
His name is Keith Wildhaber. He's openly gay. But what's most interesting about his story is that he had previously sued his department, his own department, and won a $19 million discrimination lawsuit because he says he was passed over for promotion because he is gay. So now, having won that suit, he's now been promoted to lieutenant and become the first commander of the St. Louis County Police Department's Diversity and Inclusion Unit.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, I find it extremely rare that you sue your employer and then get promoted and handed over division. So good for him.
Yep.
He will have his work cut out for him because according to the Plain View Project, which put out all those insights into what the cops were doing in social media, in private groups.
Oh,
what they
God,
were saying.
yes.
Okay, well, 22 of those cops have been ID'd in the St. Louis Police Department as having made what were deemed violent, racist, and or Islamophobic slurs. So he's going to have his work cut out for him.
He is, and I hope he gets the real support of the department and that this is not just lip service and, you know, putting him in an untenable position. Hopscotching a few other stories, the Supreme Court of the United States will not review a Texas decision. The Texas court refused to mandate a Texas prison to give surgery to a trans inmate. In spite of all the evidence of gender dysphoria or whatever, prisons are now being mandated around the country to provide not only hormones and other treatment, but surgery, and the Texas court said no, and the Supreme Court refused to review that decision.
Now, did the Texas, I was trying to get the details of this when I was reading it.
Yeah.
I think the Texas court said it was okay to refuse evaluation for these things.
Yes, you can't even look into it.
Right. So in other words, if they'd already been evaluated, then then I would guess they would fall under the already existing mandates.
Maybe that's the way to
so
avoid it.
this is their way of short-circuiting,
yes,
perhaps.
Very
but
clever.
You should ask Art Leonard,
Yes.
regular guest here and
Yeah.
very well-known New York City attorney and legal specialist.
On the other hand, the court system in New York State will add gender options to jury documents and other things like that. So when you register for jury duty or complete a form when you get there that gives them all the information they want about you, you don't have to identify as male or female. You can identify as non-binary, you can identify as trans, you can identify as whatever, however you want to identify yourself.
World is changing.
It absolutely is.
Well, also here in New York City, we have the first affordable senior housing for New York City, aimed primarily for LGBT people, and it's in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. You're looking at it right there.
Yep, there on the left, the Stonewall House.
Exactly, and it has 145 apartments, which makes it, at present, the biggest facility of its kind in the country. And I say at present because hopefully there will be more of these opening all over the country.
Yes, and as you are pointing out, it's not the first of its kind, but it may be the biggest. It's also important to point out that these facilities are not LGBT exclusive, because that would be illegal.
Exactly.
But they position themselves as LGBT friendly, and they make specific outreach to the LGBT communities.
Well, this one has a SAGE Center right on the first floor.
Yes, yes.
SAGE being, I don't know what the acronym stands for anymore because they changed
Senior
it.
Advocacy in whatever.
No, yeah, right. SAGE devotes itself to elderly LGBTQ services, which you probably already know, but just to get it out there.
Yes.
And this is specifically aimed towards LGBT seniors who are maybe having financial issues.
Absolutely. Low income. It is low income housing for LGBT seniors. Richer people will have to build their own. I've always believed we will end up back in dorm living eventually, and that would be a good thing. In Dover, Delaware, strange story, charges have been dropped against a former councilman who's now 90 years old. He drove up to the Pride Parade, got out of his truck, his pickup truck, removed barriers, and then drove right into the Pride Parade, hitting people. And he was charged.
Supposedly hit only one.
Okay, yeah, it's basically minor, which is why I think the charges were dropped. But it's unclear whether he was impaired in any way. Although I think he has to undergo.
Yeah, there were definitely conditions.
Maybe someone else.
There were conditions for the charges being dropped.
He has to pay medical expenses for whoever it is he hit or whose foot he ran over or something. But in Portland, Oregon, a man pleaded guilty to walking up to a trans woman who was waiting in line somewhere and just punching her out. So he pleaded guilty, so he was convicted. He had served already 75 days in jail awaiting trial. That's pretty onerous. So he was sentenced to time served and probation. They're going to keep an eye on him for a while. He apologized. He said, "I wasn't myself." Really? Who were you? But he's going to be evaluated for mental health issues, drugs, that kind of stuff, to make sure he's not in a position to do that again. In Dallas, Texas, I would say even more serious, 2 men have pleaded guilty for enticing gay men on Grindr, arranging meetups, and then pulling out a gun and forcing them to go to ATMs and withdraw all their money. And they have been charged with hate crime for doing this by targeting gay men. Watch out who you meet on Grindr.
We will have more on anti-gay violence and on Grindr in international news.
And in New Jersey, the legislature has banned gay and trans panic defenses. They're the 9th state to do so. That means you can't go into court and say, "I just freaked out because I realized I was with a gay person or a trans person, so of course I killed them." And one more violence story in Queens, New York City. A gay man from Ecuador originally was attacked brutally and beaten up and had homophobic things yelled at him. He says not only was he beaten by these guys who came after him, but he was not well treated by the cops or the hospital either. So he's going public with that.
Well, violence in print of a different kind, namely bloodshed amongst the staffs of 2 well-respected LGBTQ magazines, namely Out and The Advocate. The editors-in-chief of both resigned on the same day. They are both owned by Pride Media. And Philip Picardi, who had been at Out magazine as its editor-in-chief for about a year, was basically booted. As was Stafford, I'm missing his first name here somewhere, Zachary Stafford, who was the editor-in-chief of The Advocate, also there for about a year, and actually notable because it was the first time that an African-American had been the editor of The Advocate. So they're both gone, as well as many as 11 other staffers, and a high-level person at Pride Media is gone. So this has been sort of an ongoing bloodshed at the gay magazines.
A lot of the reason they resigned is that Pride Media was not paying freelancers at all or in a timely fashion. This has been a story for decades at these places. It's a mystery to me how, in this day and age, given how, that 150 corporate floats show up at the Pride Parade, that these LGBT mainstream kind of magazines are not able to thrive financially.
But then you also have to remember they're under the same kinds of pressures as magazines in general, which are dying.
Yes.
So even a niche magazine like these are gonna face similar problems, and I guess it's more than they can financially bear.
I think that's a good point, but I think some of it still has to do with the fact that they are LGBT magazines. I don't know. Hallmark, perhaps you would like to buy some advertising in these magazines. All right, are we ready to move on? Have you got anything else?
Just a black woman, Imani Rupert Gordon, has taken the reins at NCLR, the
Yes.
National Center for Lesbian Rights.
Yep.
She is a social worker and was previously executive director of the Chicago-based Affinity Community Services.
And Tracy Baim, who is the editor of Windy City News in Chicago.
Windy City News or Windy City Times?
Windy City Times, thank you very much. Don't count on what I say. Wrote a note saying how spectacular Imani is and how sorry she was to have Chicago lose her because NCLR is in San Francisco. So I liked seeing that endorsement from Tracy.
Cool. Shall we hopscotch the globe?
We shall hopscotch the globe. Well, uproar, furor, mania in Mexico City, where an art exhibit includes a fanciful picture by an artist of the great Mexican hero Emiliano Zapata, portrayed in the movies by Marlon Brando, but portrayed here as wearing a pink sombrero, naked, and black high heels on a horsey.
Now, to give this a little bit of context, this is on display at the Palacio de Bellas Artes, which is a very well-respected museum gallery space in Mexico City. And it is part of a larger exhibit.
Government-curated exhibit.
Of Zapata images, because Zapata is so sort of central to the Mexican identity. They wanted to say, okay, well, what does Zapata mean today? What are new interpretations on Zapata? So this is the context in which this thing has been presented. Well,
the artist also said that he used a trans woman as a model. That is not going over well with people. So here's how crazy things are around this exhibit. There was a big fight outside the building. There you see some of the violence as LGBT activists opposed conservative right-wing protesters, and this thing got ugly. People were in the streets fighting each other over this. So this is a huge deal in Mexico City. The president, I'm happy to say, spoke out against censorship. It reminds me, of course, of Rudy Giuliani when it was mayor of New York, condemning Chris O'Feely's gorgeous picture of the Madonna that included some dried elephant dung, which was there symbolically.
He tried to defund the Brooklyn Museum for that.
He did. He tried to change the law so he could censor art. And but the president of Mexico is standing up for artistic freedom, which is lovely. But that is what's going. The family of Zapata is threatening a lawsuit against, I don't know, the artist, the government, whatever. But it's not, it's not pretty.
While we're in Mexico, the latest update on the state-by-state fight for same-sex marriage, kind of like what we had here.
We try to avoid these stories, but go ahead. It's too complicated.
No, I'll give you the simple version. Baja California is the next state where this is likely to be passed by their state legislature, but their new governor, Jaime Bonilla Valdez, is trying with right-wing groups to have a referendum about the matter. But the problem with that is that Mexico's constitution prohibits referenda on matters of human rights. Why don't we have anything like that here? Because our rights should be never subjected to a popularity test.
Okay. In Perth, Australia, they held their annual Pride Parade November 30th because, of course, it's down under and it's summer there now. So huge fight, as there has been here and in many parts of the world now, over the overabundance of corporate floats in the Pride Parade, the presence of police with guns in the Pride Parade, the imposition of wristbands to get into the parade, the exclusion of individuals who might want to join in, all the same issues. So there's something called the Rainbow Rebellion. They are furious about this, much like Reclaim Pride here. But unlike Reclaim Pride, where we staged an alternate march and will again next year. We're working on that.
Full disclosure, Anne is intimately involved.
I don't
Full
hide
disclosure,
that.
I marched.
Yes. But Rainbow Rebellion went and grabbed the front of the parade, and they just showed up and took over and marched at the head of the parade, which led a lot more of the crowd to jump in, which they had been told they couldn't do. They couldn't join the parade. So it was evidently quite a scene there in Perth, Australia, and the police did not interfere and did not try to drag them out of there. So I think it all went peacefully, but this is an issue that is sweeping the world.
I will hopscotch back to Latin America to say I was in Buenos Aires in November for their Gay Pride March. And it was remarkably, it made me nostalgic for the old days here in New York, because it was a very organic affair and it was very political. Everyone was talking about the rights of LGBT. LGBT in
Oh,
Spanish.
thank you.
Yeah,
You're just here to show off your Spanish accent.
I'm really getting it in whenever I can today.
I see. I see that.
But it was so much fun, and the protest march. I mean, it was a real protest march.
Yes.
Anybody could join in.
Yes.
And they handed out little flyers with the chants.
Oh boy.
And Latinx instead of Latino or Latina, and we were, I was chanting along. It was really fun. So.
Well, that's the thing, and the small town parades are great too. Again, the people. And that's the whole impulse behind Reclaim Pride, is get the people back in the streets instead of the floats, instead of the exclusionary wristbands, all of that. It should be for the people, for celebration, for rebellion, for whatever, for the people.
Well, while we're in Argentina,
we're not quite there yet. First, we're going to go to Russia and Canada.
Yes, thank you.
So in Russia, if I can find this on my list, yes, St. Petersburg, Russia, 3 men jumped and beat up an 18-year-old girl. I think there are actually a few of them. There she is. They didn't like her lesbian appearance, so they just jumped her in the street and beat the bejesus out of her, and there she is. And that's what can happen to you in a lot of places around the world. And then less violent, but also exclusionary, a Canadian couple, including a guy who was named Mr. Gay Canada 2019, he wanted to have a destination wedding with his fiancée. And so they settled on Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. We're now back to Mexico. And so he picked the Sheraton in Puerto Vallarta, and he started trying to contact them. He is a well-known YouTuber and blogger, so he's got quite a following. Let me see if I can get his name. Josh Reimer, R-I-M-E-R. You can look him up because he has a long story on YouTube about his experience of first of all, just trying to get in touch with the hotel. He submitted an application for the wedding with both people's names. And finally, after many, many, many tries of connecting with them, he was finally told by the Sheraton in Puerto Vallarta, we don't do same-sex weddings. We are not equipped to do a special event like that. He said, special event, we're gonna have 45 people and 95% of them are straight. It's not like we're having go-go boys.
Well, the Sheraton's loss was the Hilton's gain, because
there they are, the happy couple.
And they were wed in the Hilton instead of at the Sheraton, which said, we'll gladly host your wedding ceremony and feast for free for you and your 45 guests at Hilton Puerto Vallarta.
Because Josh Reimer put this YouTube thing up, and Hilton evidently has a good social media team because they noticed this and immediately stepped forward with this offer. And then a cruise line, Vakaya, said, and you can take our gay cruise to Lisbon, Portugal, too. So they're all very happy, but we're not happy about Sheraton and what they did.
And another part of that story is it pays to be a YouTuber, apparently.
Publicity, well, look what happened to Hallmark.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
circling around. But let's circle over to Argentina now.
All right, so in Argentina, the new president got inaugurated, and his drag queen son, not in drag, but who was famed in Argentina as a drag queen.
We have talked about the son before.
Was by his side wearing a little rainbow flag tied up as a sort of pocket handkerchief.
Yes, we have a picture of the happy little family at the inauguration. There they are. So there's the son on the right, and that is a little pride flag peeking out of his breast pocket. He later took it out and waved it around. is that the mother on the other side, or a sister?
Not sure.
Sister? I can't tell. Anyway, it's the proud father with the drag queen son who goes by the name Dizzy. D-H-Z-H-Y. Now there is Dizzy in drag. It's not the picture you wanted.
Very disappointed. There was this fabulous picture of Dizzy as Dark Phoenix. For those of you who are X-Men fans like me, you would have instantly recognized Dizzy in this attire, and it was fabulous.
You can find it on Instagram. We could not physically grab the picture off of Instagram to show it to you, but if you go to Instagram and look it up, you can find it there. But congratulations to all of them. Again, it's nice to see a proud parent celebrating their kids.
And he says, hey, my son is apparently very important and very well respected in this community. I'm all for it.
Yep, absolutely.
Meanwhile, in Brazil, neighboring Brazil, there was a Netflix Christmas special from a parody group called, where's their name? Porta dos Fundos. I don't have a Portuguese accent, sorry. But anyway, they did a parody Netflix special, which apparently they've done before, about Jesus bringing his boyfriend home to meet Mary and Joseph.
It's called The First Temptation of Christ.
Well, the right wing is going bonkers. No surprise there, in a very Christian, very Catholic country with an extremely anti-LGBT right-wing president. They have called them demons and heretics. Now, mind you, the same group last December did a Christmas special, which was called The Last Hangover, a parody of the Hangover movies, in which, according to a historian who talked about it on Twitter, last year's Christmas special, Jesus was portrayed as a sadistic, homicidal, hedonistic drunkard who hated to pray, and no one was bothered.
No.
Now that he's homeless and gay,
a happy gay,
the world has fallen. It's atrophying the brain. I think that's the quote of the day.
Hey.
It's atrophying the brain.
All right, I want to flip back to good news from Colombia. We have talked often about the lesbian mayor of Bogota and her partner, who is a state senator. Well, they got married, and there is their lovely wedding picture. The state senator on the left, the mayor on the right.
The mayor is Claudia Lopez, and the senator is Angelica Lozano.
Congratulations to them.
Yes.
Everything looks happy in Bogota.
And in Cuba, there is a new LGBT church, the Nuevo Templo Inclusivo. It is not the only gay inclusive church. There's an MCC church there. But this one is part of a church that's also in Brazil and in Mexico. And so they have that now as well.
Okay, good luck to them. All right, in France, in Paris, a gay couple was lured, not unlike what we told you about Dallas, ambushed, severely beaten with iron bars by 10
guys.
10 guys shouting slurs at them. This business of, don't people have better things to do?
One of them may have suffered permanent disfigurement, being smashed in the face with the metal pipe. And they have one person in custody who's, I believe, 17 years old. But yeah, it's an unfortunate increase in violence in France.
Well, and in Queens, and in Dallas, and all over the place.
No, but specifically in France, the statistic between 2017 to 2018, I think anti-gay violence went up 22%.
Wow.
So.
But Grindr is trying to do something about that. They have issued or added some privacy and security features for users in homophobic countries around the world, including the United States, I hope. But they are aware of this business of luring people through their app for robbery and violence, and they're trying to warn people and make it tougher.
Sure, they've enacted a couple of specific rules which you can look up online that help people, including allowing them to unsend messages that they've already sent, and on images automatically expiring so that they're not there to be found by authorities. So.
And we're just learning something that happened in Gabon in Central Africa in July. They passed a law banning sodomy, banning gay people. The trend has been the opposite worldwide, including in Africa and places like Botswana that decriminalized homosexuality this year. But Gabon has added a new exclusionary law that has criminalized us. And what happens then is this gives police the opportunity to arrest people and demand bribes for release. So it's a whole little racket they've got going. Nothing new, but really depressing.
And while we're in Africa and Nigeria, 47 men there who were rounded up in a bust of 57 at a party, which was allegedly a gay party, are facing their first legal proceedings, which now are predicted to spill into 2020.
February, yeah. They held the first trial day, I guess. Well, and Zambia, we've been talking about how the U.S. ambassador to Zambia freaked out with and was horrified at a gay couple who got 15 years in prison just for being gay. And now the president of Zambia is asking the U.S. government to recall that ambassador and get him out of there because he's so angry that the U.S. ambassador spoke up about this. And this will be a real test for the Trump administration. Do they bow to the homophobia of the Zambian government? Do they let the Zambian government tell them what to do in this?
I think because Trump considers this an S-hole country, I think he will feel quite comfortable leaving the ambassador there so that he can give himself a patina of pro-gayness and sell more rainbow MAGA hats.
Yes, he certainly takes those opportunities. Well, one little bit of good news and rebellion in Africa. In Kenya, some LGBT activists organized a climb for justice. They took a rainbow flag up to the top of Mount Kenya. There they are, summiting Mount Kenya with the rainbow flag, and
the Kenyan flag.
Is that the Kenyan flag?
Yeah.
Okay. And a little flag that says "Climb for Justice." So congratulations to them. I know we're not used to seeing pictures in snow from Africa, but there it is.
Well, apparently it sparked a lot of social media backlash, but good for them for doing it regardless.
I love activism around the world.
Well, we told you we would come back to conversion therapy under international news. So in Germany, they have just, and I mean like 5 minutes ago, according to our time, taken the first step to banning conversion therapy. It's passed one of their houses. And it is one of the toughest bans in the world. It bans conversion therapy outright for minors. It bans it if the adults have been coerced or deceived. And it puts a ban on advertising conversion therapy services. And if you violate these bans, you can get up to 1 year in prison, or if you violate the ban on advertising, you get fines for the violations. So that's a big. Ecuador, Malta, and Taiwan are the other countries that have banned conversion therapy outright, and Canada is making a move to do the same thing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, fresh from his victory despite blackface photos, has signaled that he's making a similar measure in Canada a very high priority for his administration.
He has given a mandate letter to his Justice Minister, who is also the Attorney General of Canada, saying, I want a ban on conversion therapy to be a high priority on your agenda. You know, banning conversion therapy, the ways you do you do it just for certified professionals? That's malpractice, you can't do it. Do you include religious organizations that claim it as part of their religious practice to offer conversion therapy. It gets a little dicey, but all the research is that conversion therapy is abusive, harmful.
It's crap.
Well, here we started with Alana Chen in Colorado killing herself.
It's crap. It should outright be banned for minors. It should be banned if you've been coerced or deceived, and that's exactly what the Germany law does. I take a slightly more freedom of choice view. If you're talking
You're
about
a libertarian.
maybe a little bit libertarian on this issue, and I keep coming back to the thought of, what if someone said to us, no, we're banning same-sex marriage because we know that that's not good for you.
Well, you can't prove that, so I am not accepting that ban, but we can prove that conversion therapy is bad.
That is a good point.
All right, moving on. In Cambodia, the government has turned down requests to legalize same-sex marriage, but urged the population to practice no violence, no discrimination against LGBT people.
Going in the wrong direction in the same part of the world in Australia, their religious freedom bill targeting us just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Now the bill includes discrimination in employment by faith-linked hospitals, charities, aged care facilities, and homeless shelters, amongst other things. So they just keep making it a bad thing for us, and we'll see if it actually becomes law.
Okay, a couple of quick notes to get us out of international news, so we have a couple of minutes for entertainment news. In Korea, Korea Air has accepted the marriage of two Korean lesbians who were married in Canada. They have now been accepted into the Korean Air Sky Pass program as family. That's revolutionary. In Germany, a panel of Catholic bishops has issued a decision that homosexuality is normal, but they haven't said anything about whether it's okay to practice it, but they may reassess the rules on marriage and adultery and birth control. That's a little revolutionary. At the Vatican, the Pope, we may have buried the headline here, the Pope has canceled pontifical secrecy, which was only put in place in 2001, around abuse of, sexual abuse by Catholic clergy. So now you can turn people into civil authorities. This pontifical secrecy, adopted in 2001, meant you could not turn abusive clergy into civil authorities. That is shocking.
Unbelievable.
And in the British elections, 46 LGBT people have been elected to the new parliament. 21 of them are Conservatives, 15 are Labour, 9 are from the Scottish National Party, and 1 is an independent.
All right, so entertainment news?
I don't have any current AIDS news. I'll just recommend the AIDS panel again in 2 weeks.
And I will quickly hopscotch a couple of things. You mentioned Watchmen. There's gay content. I won't say what it is so that you can watch it and be surprised.
Okay.
I did see a preview of West Side Story. It was interesting. They made some interesting choices, some successful, some not. But there is some gay content in that, and I won't say anything so as not to ruin the surprise.
Thank you.
And there were the 2 stars that just were on the screen. I will say that the guy who plays Tony, Powell is his last name, and I don't have it in front of me, and I should. Isaac Powell. He is fantastic. Gay content with Kate McKinnon playing a lesbian character who's totally endearing and in a very interesting position as an employee at Fox News, as a lesbian who supports Hillary.
Okay.
So she's great. And I enjoyed the movie quite a bit, even though I heard that it was a little heavy-handed. I did not agree. I thought it was only heavy-handed because what was done was so audaciously
All right,
heavy-handed.
we're down to our last 40 seconds.
Last 40 seconds.
PBS is doing a new LGBT series eventually, and Channel 13, the local version, has hired Taylor Mack as its first artist in residence for its all arts operation, and he's going to produce great new content. And I'm looking forward to HBO's 2nd season of The New Pope on January 13th with Jude Law and bringing in John Malkovich. And congratulations. Films added to the Library of Congress's National Film Registry before Stonewall and Boys Don't Cry, and we are done. Thank you, Chris Cooper. Rights and Reactions next week.